Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining the live session of KQLCafe, November 2025. And today, unlike normally where we do it on the last Tuesday, this month we do it on a Monday. And as a pre-info in December, we'll enjoy our Christmas time, so there won't be a KQLCafe there. But if you go to KQLCafe.com, you'll see that we already have a good number of special guests for 2026. So as always, your host, Johnny, and myself. And today's agenda, we have a few new things around KQL, not that much, but I believe quite important what we have. Then we will have Daniel Mozes as our guest today from Microsoft, and he will talk, to my knowledge, around KQL and specifically Defender for Office topics. We've prepared some learning topics for you, 2 cool functions, and last but not least, what did you do with KQL? So Johnny and I have been busy as always, and there's always some KQL in our daily work that we're more than happy to share with you. As always, if you have any questions, please use the chat or raise your hand. So, first of all, back on early November, on the 6th, we had KustoCon. And I hope that any of you has joined there, either live or even on site. We really had a great event, great feedback, and most important, great sessions. And in the coming weeks, we'll continue to publish those sessions. So if you go to either the YouTube channel of KQL Cafe, there's a playlist called CustoCon 2025, or you can go to KQL Cafe, and there you also find a pointer to CustoCon 2025. And last week we published the first session from Henning Rau, and we'll continue to publish additional sessions from that day in the next coming weeks. Now, if you happen to join either online or on site and you haven't filled in the feedback form, here you find the link and the QR code. So any feedback would be highly appreciated, or even if you want to provide feedback after you have watched the sessions. The next topic around news in KQL. Well, I guess most of you are aware that last week we had a lot of news coming out of Microsoft Ignite. And one of the new capabilities that we have in the Defender XDR stack, specifically in advanced hunting, is the IdentityAccountInfo. So we already had IdentityInfo. In fact, to make things more complicated, there has been an identity info table in Microsoft Sentinel, which had some additional attributes like the OU, distinguished name, etc., and also PIM-enabled groups. Then we had the Defender, or we still have the Defender XDR identity info table. And now what's coming up new is also an identity account info table. And what we will see there is, first of all, information about linked identities. So within Defender XDR, you can now link identities. So let's say you have a service account and you want to link that account to a human being because maybe he's in charge or he's responsible for that account. So that in the event of an incident, it makes it easier to understand, who to contact. You'll have that information. So definitely take a look at the schema, which is described on the Microsoft documentation. But some notable attributes, although I haven't seen them all popping up yet. I've been constantly trying to refresh my table today or to look for any updates, but I hope that we'll see those in the coming days. And specifically interesting is, of course, the enrolled MFA methods. So if it is what I hope to see, it is that we can see, like when you go to the Entra portal, where you go to an individual user, where you will basically see, this person has enrolled a YubiKey, he's using Microsoft Authenticator, and oh my God, he's still using, email or a private email or SMS. So I hope that is that information that we'll see, because that will definitely make it easier also for housekeeping purposes. We also continue to have the group membership, the assigned roles, and the eligible roles. So keep an eye on that table as it hopefully starts to populate with all that information in the coming days or weeks. Now, an even more interesting announcement was around custom data collection. And I'm going to try to keep it short because a lot has already been written. I'm sure you know Olaf Hartung. Olaf has written already a couple of blog posts in the last 2-3 years around the topic of Defender for Endpoint and data collection. And I guess by now it's no secret that Defender for Endpoint does some data capping. So if you run, let's say, 10 times the same command, most likely you will not see it today 10 times in your event timeline. And Microsoft does so, of course, also, to kind of manage the amount of volume of data that is going up from each client to the cloud. And of course, also the amount of data that has to be processed in the background. Because sometimes, you could say, well, why would I want to know if something is executed 10 times? Now, when something suspicious goes on, you would probably want to know that. And that's why already, I believe it's about a year, Microsoft already introduced aggregated reporting. So there you would basically get information about what data has been aggregated. So if a certain activity would happen 10 times, you would still have, for example, in the device network events, one event entry, provided that all the other attributes are equal, so the remote IP address, the port, etc. But then with aggregated data, you will get information about, how much the data has been aggregated. Now, for all the people that have been waiting on, actually getting to the detail, we now have a new capability called custom data collection. And for that, I'll quickly switch screens so that I can show you what this is all about. So first of all, before I actually jump into a console, I'll strongly recommend to read Olaf's blog post, which he has shared here, where he also provides some additional background on the why, there's a need for custom data collection. And also, if you don't have ideas yourself, take a look at the repository that he shared, where you will find GitHub, a couple of, let's call it, inspirations of, event data that you want to collect. So what can we do here? Well, first of all, you have to go to Settings, Endpoint, and there you'll find a new option called Custom Data Collection. And in here, you see some of the data collection rule I've been playing with. So as an example, out of the file integrity monitoring, if I want to know, whether the host file is being modified, I can basically go here and I can say, okay, I choose the table. At this moment in time, as we speak, we have the following tables available. There I define the action type. So what activity I want to actually monitor. And then I specify in this case, that I want to monitor the host file, which I have specified here. I can then also define whether I want to have this available on all devices or only a specific device group. So as also explained by Olaf or in the Microsoft documentation, this is also something that maybe you would only want to enable on specific devices in case of a post-incident breach, hunting activity, or when you believe that still something is going on specific devices where you would want to have some additional verbose logging of activities. So here you see a couple of examples, for example, when PSExec is launched or when WMISC is being used, or also very interesting, here we now basically have the possibility to really do what we used to do with PowerShell verbose logging. So there is now also a table called device script events, and there I can not specify anything, but I can specify what events I want to monitor. Now, for my testing here, I have limited the activities just to one test user, because otherwise, there's also legitimate activities with PowerShell, like the Defender sensor itself, the service, and maybe even legitimate topics in your environment that are running in the background. Think of, config manager, PowerShell app deployment toolkit, and so whatsoever. So personally, I wouldn't just, lock everything that comes out of PowerShell, because, and that's also important to note, this data, although the processing is free of charge, the ingestion that this causes will by default go into your Sentinel tables. So those tables, the ones that you see here, will then be populated. Once you create the first jobs, it will create those tables in your Sentinel Log Analytics workspace. And there you pay the normal ingestion cost as well as the retention cost. Now, one thing that you can do, of course, which was also announced at Ignite, it was announced in July, you can basically go and do the following if you like. And if you say, well, I don't need those data to be live for maybe analytic rules, you can, of course, go to and basically change the table so that all this information is not going into your Sentinel space. Let me search that again. But as you can see here, device custom, and when you click on manage table, in this case, I told this table to not store the data in the analytics tier, but to store it in the data lake tier. So what's now happening that all my script events will not be ingested in the Sentinel data tier, but in the data lake tier. And of course, if I now want to query the data, I can, of course, query the data directly here. And be aware that here you also pay for your queries. Little jump here. If you go to your billing, you will see, new billing items, let's call it like that, on your bill. And probably depending on how much data you query in the data lake, you have to factor that in. Good. Now that I'm in the data lake, I can, of course, now query my device custom script events, and I can query that and have it here. If you now wanted to have this data back, let's say you're collecting all this verbose data, but now you want to look for something specific and create analytics rules on this, you can, of course, go and say, let's create a job and run that job periodically and create a custom table in analytics. In this example, I said, out of my custom data collection, in this demonstration, I'm only interested in PowerShell commands that have invoke web request in there, in the script content. And please bring those records back into the analytics tier so that I can run any detection queries just for the case I will be interested in being notified. Of course, this is very conceptual and probably still too verbose, but just to kind of give you a very brief overview, and I explicitly on purpose make it short and just some pointers because this whole topic is probably worth a whole session on itself. But if you haven't seen custom data collection, give it a try. And what you will notice is basically the bottom line of this, that, first of all, you will be able to collect information that's by default not collected by Defender, because I guess also this is not a secret. Microsoft Defender for Endpoint is not monitoring every file on your system. It might kick in some additional monitoring when there's a specific threat going on, but And the other topic is, as explained in the very beginning, Defender is capping. So if you want to have real detailed logs of everything that happens under certain circumstances, create a custom data collection rule. And as an example, when you would normally create a connection to an IP address, you would maybe by default only see one event in Windows Defender. If you create a custom data collection rule, you probably gonna see then, for example, do a test net connection in PowerShell, run it 10 times, and you will see in the device custom network events that you have exactly 10 logs of those activities. Yeah. So I hope I explained everything correctly, but nobody's objecting. So yeah, definitely take a look at that. Yeah. Good.
And also in the in the repository of Olaf, he has some nice samples which you can also deploy with the used Python script, the Go script. And you can pre-populate it or also add your own rules to it.
As a matter of fact, let me quickly show that as well. Assuming that we will have more and more of those custom data collection rules, basically Olaf and Falcon Source have made an attempt to basically specify a YAML, to create a YAML specification how to document those, right? So those familiar with the detection rules that we see in the industry. And now for custom detections, they basically specified a format how to easily document those rules. And yeah, as Johnny mentioned, as a matter of fact, let me scroll here. Yeah, this is the YAML format. And then here they created a nice little CLI tool to basically import them into the Defender console. So if you have a larger set of specifications, it would make it a little bit easier. So because right now there's no import option in the GUI, hence why they created this nice utility. Good. And with that, I'm pleased to bring on already our guest, Daniel Mozes. Welcome.
Hi, guys. Good evening. Good afternoon. Do you guys want me to take over? I can start sharing.
Yeah, that's cool.
All right, cool stuff. Very professional. I prepared decks and everything. But with only 2-3 slides, not much. So hi, everybody. I will start with a quick introduction. Thanks, Gianni and Alex, inviting me. Thanks for the opportunity. My name is Dan. I'm working in the Microsoft side. I'm a program manager or product manager. Nowadays, we call ourselves in the Defender for Office product group. I'm working on this product since 6+ years now. My main role is customer experience, so I'm talking to large customers and channel their feedback back to our product development lifecycle and many other things doing alongside that. One of the areas I'm focusing on in the last, let's say, year and a half is to bring more value out of the hunting tables we have for Defender for Office, kind of overall feedback and questions we see out there and publicly. People a bit shy away to interact with the data, doesn't really know where to start, so we putting some effort into to help out threat hunters out there to interact with the tables and data sets and new functionality as we come. So what did I prepare for today? Today we will just have a quick look on what is there for Defender for Office in Advanced Hunting. You guys likely using Advanced Hunting every day, so this will be familiar for you. I will highlight the new things which we announced recently, either part of Ignite or in the past, let's say 6 to 12 months. Then we will of course look at in a test environment, some test queries and how you interact with the data, what type of useful hunting queries can be out there. Then I will cover something, how can you contribute to a thing we call the community queries in Advanced Hunting. If you've not heard them, this is coming from the official Sentinel Defender XDR repro. If you submit your KQL queries there is a sync process time to time happening to show it up directly in the Advanced Hunting GUI as well. This is totally open, public to contribute, but also we are product group members, our threat hunters, our researchers are also contributing to that. And then we just show how to do the contribution if you've never done that before. All right, cool. So with that, what do we have for MDO in Advanced Hunting? Of course, we have hunting tables. like every other product. This is focused on what we are focused on as a product. We focus on email and collaboration, protection, detection, investigation, and response. That's the primary job of Defender for Office. So our hunting table is naturally focused on this. We have 4 or 5 hunting tables since a couple of years in advanced hunting, primarily focused on email-related activities. This is email events, URL info, attachment info, and post-delivery events. We are adding new tables in the last 6 to 12 months, quite a lot of them. The second row you see, these are Teams-related hunting tables. They are quite unique because before you didn't really had too much visibility of what's going on Teams in Defender or in advanced hunting. You can find some role logs. Oh, there we go. Some of these. Walking in publicly. Cool. I'm not sure that was intentional. But yeah, the message events and message URL info and post events tables, these are for Teams, anything what is happening in Teams. And the 2 new table about campaign info and file malicious content info, these are for special features in MDO. We have a campaign logic to group emails if they part of a malware or phish campaign. So that's representing that data set. And the file malicious content info is information about file detection that's happening on SharePoint OneDrive and Teams. Defender for Office providing reputation, anti-malware, and detonation-based protection on files on SharePoint OneDrive and Teams. And that table has the information about the file level scans with verdict or without verdict. What you can get out of from this tables is pretty much anything happening on email. Our hunting tables has all email metadata, meaning if it's coming inbound to your tenant, going outbound from your tenant, or happening between your users, you will find the information in the hunting table. The same concept we applied for the Teams messages. So any Teams message coming into your tenant, going out from your tenant, or going between your users are logged in this table, and you can see the metadata of them. And plus the click information. The click information is particularly interesting because, most of organizations has proxies and or the device level, they log the events, but what when there is no Defender, no proxy involved. If safe links involved, we are also logging the clicks, so you can find click information in some blind spots as well. Anytime a user log in with their corporate account and clicking around in Teams, Office, or email, we logging that activity with safe links on the back end, and that table contains all that information, including Copilot now. That's a newer addition. On the email action side, you can take actions based on this metadata in advanced hunting. And we support pretty much the same actions we support in Explorer. Explorer is our guided hunting tool, the legacy one. And we support the same actions in advanced hunting. You can move messages around based on your need. You can soft delete, hard delete them, move back to the inbox from soft delete or quarantine. You can move to junk, move to delete item folders. This is all possible, and possible in not just in a single message, in multiple messages. And the 2 new action here this is fresh out of last week. We rolled out to have parity with Explorer. Now, we actually from advanced hunting KQL, you can trigger an admin submission with a take action wizard, and you can also initiate something we call auto IR or automated investigation in Defender for Office. It's a fixed playbook steps which you can trigger on emails with your KQL as a result of your KQL query. So these are new, and this is also just to support more threat hunting and response scenarios from advanced hunting as well. All right. Moving on, before we switch to Portal, this is something I wanted to highlight because I see customers forget this quite often, or threat hunters out there. You can do actions on emails, and you can do automatic actions on email. So custom detection rules are supporting Defender for Office tables, near real-time detection rules also. So if you haven't used them before, make sure you try out. There is good rules and bad rules. A good rule can be there's a phishing campaign going on, it's morphing, and Defender for Office not covering the entire campaign. You can write up a KQL query for the emails which is not get blocked or quarantined, and take soft delete action, for example, automatically as the message is coming in. If your hunting query is on a single table, you can go near real time, which means as soon as we log in KQL hunting table, the email event, the action will be also taken automatically. So this can be quite powerful. A bad example of a query for this purpose would be, let's say, inbound email on the direction of the inbound, and take action soft delete. That definitely would solve all your FN problems, but it will delete every inbound email too. So with big power comes big responsibility. Make sure your KQL queries are accurate, so you're not deleting business critical emails, but it does what it says. it will pretty quickly delete emails if they reach to the inbox, and it will just disappear from the user view, helping you to mitigate campaigns. Very good. So with that, let's have a look. I prepared some queries for you we can walk through, focusing on Defender for Office. UX is the same, so no change here. You find everything in the same place like usually you find them. Let's have a look on a couple of the tables first. Everything which is Defender for Office is under email and collaboration. So this is our table. This is where we will add the new tables. These tables are streamable if you have Sentinel or third-party SIEM solutions like the streaming API supporting this table. Not everything is done on the streaming API yet, but all the email tables are there, URL click included. All the Teams tables are supported on streaming API, so you can stream them. The file content info and the campaign info is in the works to get supported. It's also will be available in the streaming API. We're also working to make them available as a selectable option in the Sentinel connector. So the Teams and the newest tables are still a little bit of work done you can just select and start streaming them. But all the email tables you can stream already. There is hunting API support. So the Graph endpoint for advanced hunting supports these tables. Let's say 90% of them. So you can hunt with an API call as well, and you can build some custom automations if you need. So that's around like how we structured. Also, the tables are not static. I want to call this out. And I grouped my queries today to show some of the newest fields in the table, which can be useful for hunting. We keep adding new metadata continuously to the tables as either we introduce them in the product or just to close the gap between, you see in email entity page or in the Thread Explorer outcome, we want to have full priority. So that's an ongoing effort we're doing all the time. So the first one I prepared is a very simple one. This is a new field data we added quite recently. This simply goes after a new field we call distribution list. So in the email where there is something we call distribution list, you can think of it as a group with an email address, but it's not really. It's only existing in Exchange. When you send an email, it has members, and everybody who is member of the distribution list, when the email goes to the distribution list, every member will get the message. It's a nice way to send an email to multiple people. These distribution lists can be exposed externally too, as configuration on the email side, and then they became dangerous because then if an attacker is sending malicious emails to this distribution list, then it's automatically sent to everybody who is included in the DL. So this one is just going after did we see any email going to a distribution list? You can, of course, start the usual things. This is just first, is there ever any? The field will contain the distribution list email address. So if you want to see, you can start grouping around okay, what's the distribution email address? Which distribution lists are exposed externally. If you're looking for inbound email, for example, can target this distribution list. That means they are exposed. And then you can just go after a little bit to say, let's say, okay, I'm not just interested for inbound email going to DLs, but I'm interested with any threat detecting on those inbound messages, or looking for anything which is maybe not get blocked, get inboxed when it's coming to this. There's quite a few detections here. I was start sending trash to this DL, what I exposed. Same metadata available for all these messages when it's coming in. Again, coming into a single email address, but we bifurcate and log per recipient everything. So if there is more than one member of this DL, you will see a single line for every recipient. So you can take various response actions for this as well. Okay, so that's I thought I shared. It's an interesting new metadata on email events. Moving on, there is one table which contains URL information. This is also interesting, meaning we have a process in Defender for Office when URLs are in various places in email messages, in the body of the email, in attachments, or in the subject of the email. We extracting as part of the email processing these URLs, and these extracted URLs are available for hunting in the URL info table. That means you can start anchoring on it with some hunting and detections. This one is looking for some not so good reputation top-level domains and trying to see did we get any email from this not so good reputation URL domains, and then you can start taking up from there. You can anchor on whatever you want and then piggyback from the URL back to the email events and see okay, what was the sender, what was the subject, was there any attachment in the URLs? There's then the normal metadata is available. One idea can be you are continue this on URL click, and to see is anybody clicked, what was the click verdict, you would just join on the URL click events table to see the click event on these URLs too. So it can be interesting, can be useful even as a detection. Although this one is a join, so this wouldn't be possible to run as an real-time rule, but you can run as an OR rule as well. Right, moving on, I mentioned we are extracting URLs from multiple locations. A couple of years ago, we added the capability to extract URLs from QR code, and we do this at scale, meaning as we process every single message, if we see a QR code in the mail body or in certain attachments, we're extracting it and log it as a URL. Why this is great? Because then you can, without any extra processing on your side, you can hunt on this URL. So we made it available in the URL info table, and you can anchor on these if the URL location is QR code. If the URL is extracted from a QR code by our product, then the URL location will be QR code, and you can go after URLs which has threats and coming from a QR code. So this is pretty cool, and it's happening on pretty much every messages. So you can start, like hunting or statistics or reporting scenarios like what's going on when it's coming with QR code. It was a newish technique somewhere last year. It starts spiking. Threat actors start using QR codes to trick users pretty aggressively. All right, so that's on URLs. I also brought some queries on some new detections we have, or newer detection we have. We announced, I think 6 months ago, we baking in the protection pipeline of the system large language models based detections during Mailflow, and we're not just adding it as a protection mechanism. We usually try to add everything to hunting queries as well, so you guys can like anchor on it. So this one is going after were there any phish detection when the detection used to find the threat is content based. So this one is just bringing the number, how much in the last 30 days. The detection method field will contain the detection technologies, and LLM content analysis, since this was released, is one of them. Then you can go after, we also have something we call threat classifier as part of this process, because LLM also good, not just good to understand the content, but also good to help you understand what's the intent of the content. That's also available in hunting query. So if we take it forward and we anchor in another field called threat classification, you can start looking at it like what type of threat classes we call in our terminology. This means what type of intent of those some of the phish messages which was detected are. That can be interesting to identify, like what's the common theme threat actors are using when they're trying to trick users with a lure based on mail body. You can also go by top targeted user by this intent. So this is also interesting. I'm not just interested how many emails detected by this intent, but who is the most targeted user for each of the classes. So who is the one who is getting the most invoice rules or business intelligence or payroll or gift card rules from my users. These can be useful for target them with some cybersecurity trainings, or just do some other huntings around their devices or identity, because they clearly targeted by phish using these lures. Maybe review some of the processes internally. If it's a lot of payroll and invoice type of phishing they are targeted, some may go through and there can be some problems stem from that. The other one I was bringing today this is quite new. I don't even think definitely I think we talked about this one on some of our sessions. Can't remember we did actually announced it already. This is live. In MDO we have a system in the backend we call sender intelligence internally. That's something like we're tracking per recipient sender in the backend data sets, and we use it for training ML and other things, altering detection rules. What's the contact relationship between the sender and the recipient? And we have various use cases here when it's not established at all, or never contacted, or not recently contacted. We boil it down to really a Boolean hunting schema variable. Is it first contact or not? But what this really means is it established contact or not? And if the value is 1, that means like there is no previous history of communication or back and forth email with this sender. This is a new schema entry for email events, and you can use this to anchor on who is the guys who's sending me emails with threats, and they are first contact. Okay, because attackers are morphing email addresses. It's pretty easy to do, and then you can use this to increase the accuracy of your detections. Yeah, not everything looks legitimate is illegitimate, but if it's first contact, likely. So that's I think again a useful useful schema addition here. For the new tables, I mentioned the campaign info and the file content malicious info. I brought some key examples how to kind of play around with them or interact with them. So first I will show you like what data is in this table. So campaign info, if you ever use Explorer, we have a tab here called campaigns. This is like an offline process. After email delivery, we're using the logic to group emails together if we think there is similarity in between them and form campaigns. And this campaign information is then feeding upstream detections, but also we have like a report in the UX in Explorer where we can visualize, and then you can get information like what was this campaign, was there a message inboxed, and who clicked on it, and what was the click rate kind of thing. This is the data which is available in this new hunting table, and then you can just anchor on it and start using this data for hunting. I use this here for reporting, not for typical hunting. I was just anchoring on malware campaigns by email count and see what type of malware families are using the campaigns mostly, and then just start grouping it together. This can be, of course, then taken forward if you want interested to other information coming out from this campaign. You can render different ways: row, line, column, pie chart, normal KQL. So that's on the campaign information. This is useful because we get a lot of feedback like that information in Explorer only 30 days. Having the same data in advanced hunting means you can stream it and you can keep it as long as you want. The other table, which is pretty new, recently announced and shipping right now, if you check the message center post for it, is file malicious content info. This is, again, giving you the data which is in content malware tab in Explorer, available as a hunting table. So what kind of things are here? Defender for Office has a feature called Safe Attachment. And you can enable Safe Attachment to work on files on SharePoint, OneDrive in your environment, and files used in Teams because they are going to SharePoint and OneDrive. And as part of the integration, when there is a sharing signal happening from these applications, then the files are grabbed and sent to MDO for processing, which means we run our full file detection stack on it, file reputation, anti-malware, and detonation as well. And this tab shows you the output of that scan. We used to only show the detections here. When we release the hunting table, we also start showing you everything, even the ones which we are not detecting. So every scan events we do, it's on not just in the UX, but also in the hunting table. So even if you didn't find it malicious, this can be useful because you have metadata on the file name and file location, the path of the file, things like that. And you can go after some users like, why are you storing so many malware on your OneDrive? For example, this one I'm summarizing based on folder path. And if you know a little bit of SharePoint, you can see like these, when it's /personal and the username, this is my user's OneDrive. Some of them pretty aggressive to uploading malware. And then there is a SharePoint site also, looks like used to be to store some malware files on it. When our detection is detecting these files, we are blocking on SharePoint and it's available in quarantine. This can be a good hunting, trigger as well. And then you can go after, is it made it to the device before it gets blocked or anything like this? Or was it, going out as an email? Then there is many other ways to do that. About the file scan, there is quite a lot of information. When we scan and detect, we also generate a SHA hash. That can be, again, useful. You can apply your custom detection rule from third-party threat intel if you want, not just from our own. Document ID is also useful because you can use that to anchor on the audit log. And you can find the upload event when the file was uploaded because the document ID is the same. I will publish some queries around this as well because I think these are also useful information. Or just you can go by the file name or the file path to find common patterns in the environment after a compromise. So that's on file detection. There's another new metadata I thought I share. This is also fairly recent in the hunting table. It's called forwarding information. So in the Exchange and email world, there's a functionality called automatic forwarding of emails. Not sure you ever used that. You can set up on a mailbox yourself, and every email come to the mailbox, goes somewhere else. You can set up with an inbox rule. Certain emails from Gianni come to my inbox, then forward it to somewhere else to external, Hotmail, Gmail, external email addresses. There was no hunting information for this forwarding, but because this metadata is get added to our schema, no, you can, actually. This is an interesting cure because I'm not just looking for were there any auto-forwarded emails. I'm summarizing where they are going through. Okay, and sometimes this can be just a smoking sign. Yeah, why is an email going to these random addresses? And then you see what type of forwarding was used, and then yeah, of course, there is the user who did the forwarding, so you can clearly understand like which mailbox doing this forwarding, how many emails it sent, and where they are going to. Okay, because this is part of the email events table, it's pretty easy to interact with it. Also pretty easy to write detection on it. So if any email auto-forwarded to certain, consumer email domains, you might want to have an incident trigger in the incident queue, for example, because maybe that's not normal. You can control forwarding in Defender for Office. So you can actually stop users to doing this type of activities. And we recommend to do that and only allow for certain users to do this type of auto-forwarding business. But even for the ones you allow, you want to see where this message is going through. And this will let you to do that and have some reporting and custom detections on it directly from KQL. And I think the last one was, I thought I'd bring this because this is also interesting because the email events table has the IP address of the sender. This means like the IP address of the sending email server, which connected to us, Defender for Office, to send the email message. We're logging IPv4 addresses and 6 addresses. And for IPv4, you can use, I think this is a built-in function to get geolocation information. And this can be interesting to find like, okay, which email infrastructure based on which IP parameters are targeting my environment when it's coming to maybe you're looking for fish or certain type of senders or sender domains or things like that. So this is just, taking out the country, but you can get out completely all geo information. This looks not so nice here, but it looks much better in a Sentinel workbook where you can just, render a map and show like where you are targeted from. At least the loss of the infrastructure or the target. All right, cool. I pause here. Any questions? I know it was a lot. Before we move forward.
Not a question, but a little realization from myself that you brought up an incredible amount of, let's call it, nice little nuggets that have evolved in the schema I wasn't aware of. So definitely helpful, especially just the last one, forwarding, because of course we used to look at suspicious inbox forwarding rules, which sometimes can be a little bit annoying to investigate because, maybe it was legitimate, who created it, etc., etc. So, yeah, this is definitely a nice addition. Yeah, but also I have to rewatch our own recording. But yeah, definitely interesting what you're showing here. Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, forwarding is interesting. There was reports on Exchange, but nothing in really hunting. And in CloudOps events, you can see when the forwarding was set up. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't mean it's illegitimate. It's more interesting to see what is going out from forwarding. Yeah, definitely when it's inbox rule based, and then you can start getting intel like what subjects and what messages and mm-hmm. everything which is in the metadata or URLs. And let's say if you start seeing SharePoint URLs, then somebody starts forwarding and sharing information. All sorts of interesting knowledge you can get from. Happy to help. Benjamin, you have a question.
Yes, thank you. Is it planned to integrate an action to move the email back to quarantine? Sometimes I'm missing this feature.
Move back from quarantine to inbox or move to quarantine?
Move
to quarantine. Very good question, Benjamin. Happy to ask. The answer is yes. I cannot share you the date when it will come. We are working on it. The next action, if you remember my slides of the actions, which is possible, the next kind of roadmap item we are working on, now we have parity between Take Action and Explore and Advanced Hunting. The next section will be quarantine. Soon we are planning to do that, and we will communicate publicly as usual. This is long running ask from customers. It's just prioritization, but yeah, absolutely we are planning to move quarantine to Hunting and Explore.
Okay, great to hear. Thank you.
No worry. The opposite already there, if you guys didn't know, like the move to inbox will do quarantine release, so it also can be another custom detection ID. If you are hit by a false positive detection and you're tired of releasing the messages manually, with your help desk or admin team, hack up a custom detection rule, which is do the opposite of quarantine inbox, and it will do the quarantine release. Careful. Not every detection is a false positive. Most of the detections are accurate.
It would also be really cool if you integrate the prioritized score in the quarantine. That mm-hmm. would also really helpful, as we since a few weeks have in the incidents and alerts.
Interesting. Yeah, good feedback. Yeah, the incident prioritization score to be as a metadata per email. Interesting. Cool. Good feedback. Thank you, Benjamin. Very good. So if there is, Alex, you started to ask something else. Yes, sorry, I cut you off.
Yeah, not directly related to KQL, but now that we have a Defender for Office expert anyway, Nicole, what is the pattern for sometimes I see detonation events, sometimes not? Can you disclose what the characteristics are in your backend? I mean, I understand not every email gets processed, but sometimes when I look at those detonation details, like what would the HTML script download, etc., what was the verdict, sometimes they're quite interesting. And other times I see a similar email and then there's no detonation information. So I was wondering, what does it need for MDO to actually perform the detonation activity?
Yeah, that's a loaded question. A lot needed, and it's not static. We detonate a lot. What is confusing, likely your side, Alex, we're not exposing it all. Today, we're only exposing an easiest way to find if you look for URL detonation or file detonation. We're only exposing detonation details today if the detonation happening in your tenant context. And even the first time, if we detonate that entity, meaning a file or a URL. If it's already a reputation, we detonated an hour ago, 2 hours ago in your tenant, or not in your tenant, we detonated somewhere else. Today, despite we doing these rep checks and other detonations, we're not going to expose it to. Also today, we don't expose good detonations. These are things we want to do, but more work needs to be done. So that's going to be one of the reasons. The easiest way to find if you go to URL detonation and file detonation as detection technology, that's detonation in your tenant. And then we are exposing the detonation details for you. And kind of that's the answer. The criteria is we don't expose our research team controlling it and our engineering teams controlling it. They keep changing it, what they detonate and how they detonate. We detonate in mail flow, at time of click, during error investigation, during submissions you do. When you do an admin or user submission, as part of the risk scan, there is detonations in many other use cases as well. So yeah, there is a lot of use cases. How we expose the data today is quite limited, and that's why likely you are a bit confused because most of the times it's actually a reputation base. We already had that somewhere or already had that in your tenant, so we're not going to see it. You have to either find the first one in your tenant or you just don't get the information of like what was the detail of the destination.
Yeah. Okay, but let me just verify I got your response back because it helps. Because sometimes I was trying to do it in the reverse way, right? I use KQL, then I look for emails and then access detonation technology. But that doesn't necessarily mean it was detonated in my tenant. So if it was successfully detonated in another tenant and considered malicious, then although it says detonation is the verdict, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I will have the detonation with all the details in my tenant per se, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
For example, this one is a file detonation happened in my tenant first because it's inside, so I have the details of it. But if I send the exact same file again, even to my tenant, it will file detonation reputation, and I will not going to have the detonation details on that second email or any follow-up emails. Or if I send the same file to everywhere else the world, we reputation is reputation. We block for everybody based on the reputation of the file, and we're not going to expose the detonation details today. These are some things we want to do because obviously on the back end the data is available, but just not get to it today.
So to bring us back to KQL, so is there a way through KQL whether I would know that my tenant has those details available or not?
Yeah, if you hunt for the detection method file detonation and URL detonation, then you will have it. So I will actually show you, there is an example in the community queries for that, just to anchor on these two detection type, and then you will be see the detonation details for those.
Yeah, okay.
Make sense? So it will be email events, directional inbound, where detection methods has any file detonation or URL detonation, and then you got it. Yeah, and then the site pane and the full entity page will have the detonation details.
Okay.
Very good. All right. So moving back to my deck, if there is no more question, I have more content to share with you guys. As I promised, there's something called community queries in advanced hunting for Defender XDR. Not sure you are aware of this. What is the idea here? This is actually started to be two separate GitHub repository, one for Sentinel, one for Defender XDR. Then over time, these get merged. So from the Microsoft side, we have a public repository called Azure Sentinel now. It includes a lot of content for Defender XDR and Sentinel as well. You can think about of workbooks, connectors, all sorts of things. One of the content type we are using to publish here is hunting queries. And why this is interesting, because this is a way for us to share publicly hunting queries from our side. And every product team does that, research team does that. But it's also public, so everybody can not just see it, but also contribute to it. Queries, time to time, are synchronized from this GitHub repository back to Advanced Hunting. I will show you in a second. There is a section in Advanced Hunting called Community Queries, and some part of this folder structure, the hunting queries part, is actually imported there. And you can have hundreds and hundreds of KQL queries available. I'll actually show some other repositories from other folks out there. This is just from us, the Microsoft side. Quite interesting ones you can find here for across various things. What was not there for a very long time, I think last year or in summer, I started to work on this. There was not much for MDO. Pretty much nothing, like 10, 15 queries over the years, compared to how rich are the tables and how many amazing queries you can hack up. And we know fish is, the initial access vector, so you will find stuff when you start looking there for sure. So we decided in the product group with a couple of my colleagues, we will start publishing more aggressively examples for people. And I thought I'd just share you like where we are with that and how we look for that. Why is this whole approach of creating a community and sharing queries openly is useful? I mean, we see it from customer conversation. This is kind of the feedback we get. It's too complex if you are just starting with KQL to do something with it, or just do something with MDO. Even if you are experienced in KQL, like what's the data there, how I interact with it, what kind of things I can do it. A lot of the time, people are just not aware. Like you mentioned, you didn't know some of the hunting schema we shipped. A lot of people doesn't know we have tables for teams, so users cannot hide their activities on teams anymore. For chat hunters, you see all their message metadata from sending and receiving. And then just to jumpstart, like if you never did any MDO related KQL query, can we share with you some so you can start? We have some blog entries here. We shared it in the chat when we started to work on this. We blog about this, and yes, you can contribute yourself, and we want all of you to contribute. When you see a good hunting query works in your environment, you're chat hunting for email on Teams, check it in. Why not? I will show you live in the product, but yeah, you can access to this in product. What I wanted to just talk about this on this slide is how many of them we have right now for just Defender for Office MDO. We are on 260 plus. I just counted before this call. KQL query examples specifically for email and Teams kind of things. URL clicks included, and the 50 plus Teams protection query is included now. We just merged it to the Sentinel GitHub last Thursday, Friday. We added quite a long list of Teams protection specific queries, which is interacting with those Teams tables. So these are ready to go. A couple of clicks and you can use them. And I will also show you like how can you contribute. It's pretty straightforward. It's just checking in a YAML format. Same way like we see Alexi showing us, is the same format. It's documented how the structure looks like, or just copy another one and start contributing. Pretty much that's it. The process is also quite straightforward. There's a team who is checking your pull requests. They will run some automation on your KQL query you checked in as a YAML file to make sure formatting and other criteria are there. And then they will just merge it to GitHub. And next time we sync it to Advanced Hunting by our engineering teams, it will just pop up automatically. Every couple of months, we do a sync between the GitHub repository and Advanced Hunting. So if you check in something, wait a couple of weeks and it should pop up for everybody worldwide, because this is directly making it to the Advanced Hunting portal. So that's kind of how it looks like. So how can you find them? It's pretty easy. Under queries, you will see a section here, community queries. This is exactly the GitHub repository as you see under hunting queries. So if you start looking at it, like the folder structure is represented the same way like here. And when you contribute to GitHub, sync done, it's pop up here. For Defender specifically, there's a folder for all Defender queries and contributions. And this is where we put the Defender for Office queries. There's a folder called email and collaboration queries. we kind of organized our hunting query contributions by topics around Defender for Office. By the way, this is not just us. There is customers contributing to this already, quite a few of them with their own KQL queries from their own real-world phishing and response scenarios. And you just expand any of the folder and you find a bunch of query across various topics, some custom detection rule examples, all sorts of things for general hunting, more targeted hunting around email, and things like this. For Teams protection specifically, this is still just 27 of the 50 queries we checked in. The sync will happen later in the next 2 weeks to bring the rest of them. So it will be 52 or something like this. But quite a lot of them is already made it because we were lucky 2 weeks ago somebody else in the Defender side did the sync. So our check-ins just popped up automatically. But there is interesting one around QR code, just general phishing, overrides. If you don't know, you can override Defender for Office detections, and you can hunt for that, like when a user allows a sender or things like this on click, on URLs, all sorts of things on submission. This is also interesting. This one is actually not on the table of Defender for Office, but we have a lot of activities in Defender for Office which is logged in the audit log, which means in the CloudOps event table. So these are query examples for one specific set of, I will show this is interesting. When the user pushed the report fish button, we call it submission. And that events are logged in the CloudOps event table. And because it's logged, you can anchor on that audit log entry. And the cool stuff is the network message ID is in the audit log. So you can join back on email events. So then you can start getting insights like what is the top sender domains, which emails make the user inbox, and the user is reporting it as fish. So this query is an example for that, which will just go on the CloudOps events table entry, joining back in the email events, and trying to show you like what's the top senders, which emails making to the user inbox, and users are reporting that. But it's also, the idea was here is to, okay, but how many emails these senders are sending all together, and how many of them was actually reporting, how many % of them. And you can see some of them is fully, people doesn't want it. So in my test environment, some of them is like, just a friction of it. They want it. So you can get kind of like some intelligent insight, like, I do need to do something with those emails. Maybe I want to block it. With the toggle box, it's not coming back. Nobody wants it. Why do you delivering it? So you can add a toggle block to not gonna get there. Or there's a false positive there you want to go after if the other side is not a false negatives. And because you're plugging back in the email events table, you can do it on senders and sender domains. This is another interesting version. Users report everything. We know that 95% is actually nothing to do with maliciousness, but you can start learning, like, are they reporting any internal messages? And if they are reporting, what is the, let's say, I think I anchored here on the subject, if I remember, of that internal message is not just a sender. But then you can go for subject as well to, like learn what is this message is. Nobody wants the, I don't know, Yammer Teams notification or payroll email. Why do they want? Is it look fishy or what? Kind of insights. And then you can go after that. Maybe a couple of other examples. There's a lot here. It's also good to learn on things. We submitted some of the KQL researchers did when the QR madness was flaming last year. They did some interesting ones about how can you do this. At that time we didn't have this first contact in the schema, but you can still do it with KQL, of course. So if you're looking for emails from non-relevant senders, they had a cool technique here too. And this is more flexible, correct? Because in the first contact we have like, is it first contact or not? But here you can play around like what's established communication mean over what period of time. So you're just looking for any email between sender and recipients, were there any back and forth, and then you will use that information. If the email is not relevant, was there any QR code in the message, and then start anchoring on some of the things like subject or URL, or what's the URL domain, or what strings are in the URL to make your detections more accurate. Okay, I'm not sure this one will have a result, but this is an interesting one. The other one I wanted to show you here on the email side, because this is also not very well known. Maybe I will show it in the Teams side, because Teams is always interesting. So Teams is like a gold mine of information. Scary. Scary gold mine of information, what users are doing, seeing. in Teams. But here's this one I checked in last week, which is going after how can you use public TI feeds in your threat hunting. You can call out to, if the TI feed is publicly available and published, you can call out with KQL since for a while. So this one is going and looking and grabbing a list of URLs from these guys here in Switzerland, which are publishing a list of URLs confirmed based on their logic. It's malware. And I can use it as, did any of what I'm doing here, did any of my users' Teams message, doesn't matter, it's inbound or sent out or internal sent, has any of the URL which was on this list. So because the guys are updating this list continuously, my detections can be continuous. So this can be a good custom detection rules to fire. Definitely if there was no detection on Defender by it. Yeah, it can be, like a false negative. And then you can, of course, join on the URL, to the URL click, like, is anybody clicked on it? What was the click? Was it a load? Was it blocked? And then you go and chase it down on the device. If the click was a load, like, is it dropped a malware or what's going on here? So that's a cool one. And because we have the new Teams tables, you can start learning on and detecting on things, what's going on Teams. Another one can be on clicks. I mentioned you guys, like, click events are logged as part of the URL clicks events table. So anytime a user click on a URL when SafeClick's involved, which is email, Copilot, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and Teams since long time, there is a log entry. Doesn't matter it's a load or block, there is a log entry on this table. So you can use this to start learning things about, for example, URLs with threats. How many users are clicking it? Why they are clicking it? Yeah, in the another 27, which is coming here, there will be things like who is the top users clicking on URLs which are blocked. They keep trying to get to malicious content. Why? They can be auto volunteering for some, targeted education. Like, don't do that, because that can be risky. So that's going to be interesting to, anchor around on the click. But there's many other use cases here you can learn from, you can use from. This is the classical one. I like to show this one because in Teams is especially relevant. Let's say in the last few months, this is using the display name of the sender in Teams. So there is ongoing campaigns, these multi-modal attacks we shared publicly, I think the beginning of last year, and it's happening since that when, like the email bombing the target, and then they just send them a Teams message. But they impersonating somebody in the Teams message, be it a free Teams account or just a compromised, Teams account from an enterprise client, or just a sign-up tenant with some test, like the test licenses. You can create a user with whatever display name in a tenant. So why can't you use things like helpdesk, Microsoft support, Microsoft security? And because now in the Teams hunting tables, the display name of the sender of the Teams message for every message is logged, you can anchor on that. So what I'm doing here is we're looking for inbound Teams messages. So it's an external Teams message and it's not owned by my tenant. And we're looking for certain strings in the display name of the sender. I think I do have support impersonation here as well. Maybe we have bad luck, more luck with that. And then you can start learning what's going on here. And because this is there in the Teams message, you can use it hunting, action, custom detection, all sorts of use cases. Clearly it doesn't look like legitimate. The sender targeting one of my users' URLs also doesn't look highly legitimate here. So one of them even have a malware already. So definitely a good intel to what's going on there. Maybe I want to block the sender or sender domain even as a response action on Teams, because that's possible on the Teams side. So that's kind of like how this community queries works. There is a lot of value here, around 250 now, and then we're not stopping. There is more from our side. We would love you guys all contribute. So if you have cool MDO queries, add them. If you don't have cool MDO queries, have a look. You have quite a lot of them now. Learn, spread the news, learn what's going on in your environment. It's all useful for us. We're not going to stop this. We'll keep, when we see something, we'll keep adding it and sharing, and we're asking, our engaged customers to do the same. The contribution is also quite easy. You might ask, how do I do? Fear not, it's all documented. So we created this doc article back in the summer, which is going, if you never contributed to GitHub and a repository, specifically for the Sentinel one, is going to from 0 to hero. Just follow the steps, and at the end of it, you will have your first check-in and PR. You need a GitHub account. is documenting the way to do the adding a YAML file with the Visual Studio Code, and all the way down to nitty-gritty details like how the file format looks like, how to set up your Visual Studio, how to do add your hunting queries, where to add which folder structure, how the YAML file should look like, how to do the pull request. It's all step by step here, quite detailed. And yeah, I usually just share it to whoever willing to contribute, and it's pretty straightforward to do it afterwards. Just Visual Studio Code what you need. Like here's some examples of what I just did recently. For example, this one is looking for summarizing the actions on Teams Click. Yeah, this can be maybe an interesting one. Maybe we run this. This is, I think, summarizing the actions by users. This one is not yet checked or pulled in. It was done something, but I think it's doing a little bit of statistics based on URL and how many allowed and block clicks is on it, or who is clicked through. That's dangerous. It was blocked, but somebody clicked through. Why? Not good. Yeah, click-through means like in the red block page of SafeLink, somebody says, I want to go to the page anyway. It's a configuration we don't recommend, but maybe some of your clients has it. So that metadata is locked on the click table, so you can go after it. So yeah, it's quite useful, quite straightforward. Bring your own queries. That's what we ask only. Of course, check if it's not there yet. Do not have duplicates, but other than that, like we'll continue to share this as much as our time permits on the product goods side. So I'm pausing here with some key takeaways. This is the 3 things I want you guys to take it away from me rambling around in the last, let's say, 40-50 minutes. And also I pause here if you have any questions, feedback you guys want to share with us, the product group. Happy to take it. Awesome. No questions?
No. Yeah, usually online people are a little bit more quieter. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But in any case, definitely a reminder to take a look into the query library, Defender XDR. As you mentioned, there's a ton of good ideas, and what I also usually recommend people, it can also help you to find new ways of using KQL. It's not just always just aware and enjoying. You might come across new operators in your sample queries. So yeah, the benefit is, I would say, even twofold. Yeah, advance your KQL experience, and of course help detect or support your threat hunting activities. Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, I agree. Like for example, somebody checked in 3 weeks ago, one query for Teams protection. When you block a domain on Teams, it's an action we bring into MDO. But you can do it on the Teams side. I didn't know that this is logged on the Cloud of Events table. It is. So and they checked in publicly and shared in this folder structure query, which is pretty accurately do that. And then I hunted on internal, like you can actually distinguish from the audit log, like was it in the Teams admin center or in the MDO admin center. So we just update that query. But yeah, I agree. You can learn a lot from others for sure. That's including, for us who are working on this product. People are pretty smart.
Yeah, there's a couple of people that are, actively monitoring new action types and that sort of things. But I guess when it comes to detailed attributes data or even, expoundable data, here my feedback would be, you guys do so much good things, but maybe do an even better job in also making people aware that we have the data. Yeah.
Good feedback.
Yeah. Awesome.
I will push more of my team members to these calls. Gianni, will you use you as a focal point?
It's not only in MDO, right? I always get positively surprised, like when I don't have anything to do, I just go by the tables, and I'm lucky to have a few tenants, and there's always something that catches my eye, and then I get distracted because I see there's a new attributes coming. Oh, now suddenly there's some group policy changes being exposed, and that sort of information. Yeah, but yeah, sometimes I wished it would be more publicly talked about it rather than having to find out by surprise. Yeah.
Good feedback, Alex.
Yeah. Good. If there's no more questions, then 1,000 and a million thanks, Daniel, for talking to us and sharing all the goodness on advanced counting and specifically to the whole MDO product suite, as well as sharing the query library, etc. Yeah.
No problem.
And let's
Happy to
hope
help.
people follow your advice in any way, and let's see whether we see some additional PRs coming up. Yeah.
Would be good. We always give credit to people if they do PRs. We like to see it.
Okay. Good. Then if you like to stay, of course, you're welcome. And then I suggest we move on with our learning section. And today, I briefly want to talk about coalesce. No rocket science, but actually, the last couple of days I was thinking about something, and then I thought, hey, I believe I've done something wrong in the past, because I would just always create an if statement, and if not empty, and whatsoever. And the use case is as following. Give me a second. Yeah. So let's imagine to try to explain it as simple as possible. I am, going over a table. Let's make this example as generic as possible, and I am basically generically interested in who has done it. Now, who has done it? Sometimes you might have come across this situation that sometimes certain attributes do have a value or they don't have a value. Now, rather than do a case and an if is not empty and cases and whatsoever, because in the very end, I just want to have one column that says, who was it? I don't care where you get the information from. I'm not going to join it for now. I just want to have the information of who did something. So there, the operator coalesce comes in handy, because basically what it does is I say, okay, I create my a new column, an attribute called identity, or could also call it, to stick to my little story here, who did it. And now what I can say, I can basically define the order. So basically, if you have a initiating process account VPN, UPN name, then please make the value of who did it that one. If that doesn't work, then try to get something about the identity here. And here I can basically add a whole more number. I think in the documentation there is a limit specified, but I believe it goes up to 20 or 30 even. And finally, I define, a value for if nothing, brings a result. You might also have this situation sometimes that, depending on the source system, it might deliver different values. So what's now happening is basically, okay, who did it? Well, it was system, right? Because, there was an account name. Because here I have nothing at all. Everything is empty. So, I hope you get the simple example. Bottom line is I always have a who did it value, whether it came from the account UPN, from the process account name, or if both of those values would have been empty, at least it would tell me I didn't find anything, and I specified to give it the value of unknown. So that's my little trick for this month. And then I give it over to Johnny.
Yes, thank you, Alex. I'll continue my deck. Shared. So now next is what have you done this month with KQL? And I've been playing around a bit with the Azure AMA, the DCRs, the Azure Arc things. And one of the things I noticed is that the Azure Monitoring Agent, the monitoring extension isn't always updated. So I've been looking around in the Microsoft Learn pages, and I saw that there were some version numbers. So to continue with that. Let me share my other screen. So I had green 1, 2, then this one. So basically on this learn page, there's all the versions. And basically what I did is I did create a table with the deployment month, the version for Windows and for Linux, because there is the Windows versioning is a bit off compared to the Linux one. And basically what we do is on the heartbeat table, we basically grab the latest records of the devices, because during the months the version will update, so you always want to look at the latest heartbeat signal. And from there on, basically I stored it with the as operator as a table. And then first I started with the Windows devices, and I started joining them. On my tenant I have 3 Windows devices. Now basically the versions are all from June this year. Join that to the table. You can now see that we have some more information here, and if you scroll to the right, we can see this is all the same version. You can see next I also used the coalesce function Alex was talking about, because due to the joining of 2 tables, it can be that there's a value in the column resource ID 1 or in resource ID. Because for some reason my Linux one got renamed to resource ID 1 at some joins. So I used the coalesce to make sure that it was in the right order again. Store it again as the Windows devices in this case. Then I do a filter for the Linux devices, and then I do another join. And we have the table with all the versions and when they came out, because in the updates there are sometimes functional updates, but sometimes there are also security updates in them. So it's always good practice to make sure that you are running a recent version. You can also enable the auto update mechanism, so you always run the latest version, but that's a bit depending on how you like to deploy it. So that's one of my queries from this month. Back to you, Alex.
Yep. Yeah, and my query that I'd like to show you is basically related to another new capability that was announced in Defender for Identity called Automatic Windows Auditing Configuration. So before I share my query, let's do a little bit of context. So one of the topics I've seen a lot, unfortunately, and probably others that do assessments in customer environments as well, and that is that sadly some people think that after the deployment of the MDI agent, all the work is done. And unfortunately, that's not the case, because if you just install the MDI agent, or if you use now the automatic onboarding, where basically we can morph a MDE agent into an MDI sensor as well, there's still some work to do. And if you don't do that work, although it will pop up in the Defender portal as an unhealthy alert in MDI, still, sadly, I do come across environments now and then where, well, that health alert queue is full because nobody looked at it. So Microsoft is trying to address that. Basically, let's call it, well, if nobody did anything, then as we implement Defender for Identity, we now have under the advanced features, a checkbox where we can basically ask MDI to take care of those configurations. Like, for example, these auditing information. Because if you don't enable those, it will not be audited on the system. And this basically means less detection for MDI because MDI needs both network traffic and it needs, auditing information from the system to work properly. Okay, no rocket science so far, just enable the checkbox and of course hope, that we will see an improvement. Now, being a curious person and also remembering that once back in the days, I actually had written a KQL query about this. I just thought, let's, extend this a little bit and make it useful to actually verify that after I have set this checkbox, because there's a little risk that now people think, well, I just do the checkbox and I'm fine. Right, but that's not really the case because there are still scenarios where despite enabling this checkbox, you might still be in trouble and not getting all the event auditing information because, and that's what I show you here. So first of all, let's quickly dive into the query. So luckily, we do have out of the box, out of Defender for Endpoint, a action type called audit policy modification. So that has already been there for quite a while. But the information in there is a little bit cryptic. So in the audit changes, we only have those values. So basically what I'm doing here, I'm translating those into human readable text. I then, basically get some information about which category is which one. So these are the classic categories as we know them. And here we have the subcategories. So basically all those detailed auditing configurations that we can set. And then finally, I thought let's add some colors to it. Inspired by other people doing that recently, so I thought let's add that one. And then, of course, I thought, to close the circle, let's, at least in a query, add the event ID. So, if I'm really implementing and verifying this, it could help me by having all this information now available and, eventually, log on to a system and really see if those events are coming in now. So, if all goes fine, and if I execute this query, we will see a couple of things here. Let me make this a little bit more useful. Okay, so if all is fine, we see here that it's the Defender sensor executable. That is basically, adding. So it's supposed to always add those categories to the logging. That's good. That's why it's green. And, if this is the last one in the list, then we're fine. However, if you have added that checkbox, what can happen is that you will see the NS Identity service, having configured this. But during my testing, because I was basically bringing an environment in my lab from a healthy environment to a unhealthy, and that was basically by unlinking GPOs and, create some leftovers. And the problem is, if you see these type of events coming in after the MDI sensor, where basically it says SVC host, so we know it's a service, and based on a command line, if we make this a little bit longer, we will see this is group policy, and therefore, everything gets removed again. So very important. If you want to make use of this, you want to make sure that there's no, half-baked group policy layering around, still, impacting this type of configuration. Another scenario that I've come across, and I've described this in more detail in my blog post, is to make sure that you do not have any local leftovers. So, for example, maybe once you went into GP edit, on that domain controller. And what I noticed, if you have an empty audit CSV file with just the headers, the system basically thinks, okay, nothing is to be configured. As a result, you will end up again, with all those removals that you see here. So really make sure that as you turn on this one, you can use this query, and it will basically can help you to understand whether everything is set as expected. Again, if you like, you can of course do a double check. Let me quickly remove this. I had to do this because something I did today was impacting. These are normal client systems, so not important. And in the very end, what you basically want to see is that those that relate to the MDI configuration, that you have those. So the green ones should match this list. Yeah, and that's basically it. We'll share the query and the details in the show notes as usual. And that was my little journey, KQL combined with making sure that MDI auto configuration does what it's supposed to do. And with that, we've come to an end of today's content. Thank you very much for all that joined live. And Johnny will continue to post videos in the next weeks from KustoCon, so stay tuned for those. Please, again, let me actually bring it up again. If you want to make a screenshot. If you did attend KustoCon, it really means a lot to us. So only filling when you attend a KustoCon, not just because you like us. Yeah, filling this form, it would really help us. We are already thinking of, what we are going to do with KustoCon in 2026. So definitely there's going to be a follow-up. And yeah, for the rest, I wish you a pleasant December. Merry Christmas if you celebrate that, and we'll definitely hear from us in January.
Thanks all.
Have a nice evening. Bye, and thank you, Daniel, for your awesome talk today.
No problem. Thanks all.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.